beautiful work inspired by ruins. The compositions of Arabesque Rising recounts the story of 4 ancient cities in the Middle East. Composer Thomas Nassif explores ancient history by connecting visual arts, music, and architecture, and he's here to tell us about this synthesis of music and visual art forms. How did you come up with this concept?
Well, it all started 2 years ago, Andrea, when I went to Lebanon as a science teacher to this Middle Eastern country, and I was studying these 100-million-year-old fossils that lived during the age of the dinosaurs. And over time, I began to see that in Lebanon, the Romans had such an amazing impact in terms of the architecture. They built these temples, some of them 70 feet high. Also a Roman hippodrome where they would host the chariot races, 6.5 football fields long, and there's all these amazing architectural feats. And so I began to write music about my experiences. So I went from science to music, and I've been doing this for the past 2 years.
The music that you wrote, it wasn't anything that is based on actual historical significance of the music of that time, but just inspired by what you saw.
Yes, it's more of a timeless type of feel, because 2,000 years ago, during Roman times, and we really don't know what the music exactly was like. So I mean,
it's not what we hear in the movies by Cecil B. DeMille or whatever.
So it's basically jazz and classical music fused together with a little bit of Middle Eastern influence to give it that sort of that timeless sort of feel. So I guess when you hear the music, it's more structured around the architecture and what it must have looked like back at that time, some of these temples.
With Arabesque Rising, what the audience is going to see is what you saw, and that is the visual influence and other music. Tell us about the other 2 collaborators who are working with you.
Oh, yes. There are actually 3 collaborators. Thad Wilson is a noted jazz trumpeter in Washington, D.C., and he will be collaborating with me on some of the pieces, improvising over them. Also, Aaron Brophy has actually recreated an entire temple inside of this warehouse space that we've renovated. So sculptor Aaron Brophy will be involved in it, and also visual artist Ayodamola Okunseinde. And he's going to be projecting the visuals onto screen from my original photographs, giving them a different twist through computer generation. So really this idea of visual art combined with music is really what we're striving for, and so there's 4 of us involved.
Someone who wants to see and hear and feel and get the influence of Arabesque Rising, that's taking place this weekend.
Arabesque Rising, yes, at 52 O Street Artist Studios. That's in Northwest, near the corner of 1st and O Street. It's free to the public. And it's going to be an incredible event.
Well, it sounds really incredible. Thank you, Thomas, for telling us about it. Arabesque Rising. Thomas is appearing at the Artist Studio. Again, it's 52 O Street Northwest, tomorrow and Saturday, 7:30 p.m., and on Sunday at 4 p.m.
Can we just get that middle section, that transition?
Yeah.
Like, the second one?
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, ready, go.
What I've always understood, Eastern music, they incorporate a few more tones in their tone system. And so my instrument is not what's called an absolute instrument, like a stringed instrument or a slide instrument, like a trombone is what's called an absolute instrument. So a lot of times if you're trying to play a certain pitch, well, if you just move it a certain number of meters or whatever, you can adjust that pitch. Well, once I press that valve down, it requires a little bit more work from the lips and the airflow and things like that. So it's a little tougher to sort of articulate your ideas in that language again. As I mentioned earlier, it's harder to articulate your ideas because not necessarily you're limited, but you just have to really go deep into trying to figure out how to express that idea with an instrument that really isn't a part of their tradition.
The Winged Torso, which is a piece I made several years ago, not specifically for this piece, but I felt like it would look good in this space because it embraces deconstruction and reconstruction, and there's a fusion of disparate elements, combining wood and clay, and I just felt like this piece would breathe life into the Bacchus Lounge and could work within the space in an organic way. In the Bacchus Lounge, we gave it a much more timeless feel, much more in process, where maybe some of the columns had fallen over and some of the pillars were leaning against the chaise lounges that were flanking each other. And I actually had the opportunity to sit in that space during the performance with candles all around. And from that vantage point, I really appreciated the whole experience. When you talk about arabesque, you're also referring to a dance movement. And so this piece in particular it was almost like a double entendre where I was thinking about the dance, the movement of the dancer, but in a way I was cropping the figure, and the most important part of it is, all the weight, all the movement of the form comes down to the ankle and the one leg that's supporting the movement. And when Tom called me and said that he wanted me to build a Roman temple for him so that he could play his grand piano in the middle, I wasn't sure what to think at first, but the idea slowly grew on me. I know that we both share a passion for Lebanon. I'd been there as well myself a few years back, and had been to Baalbek and was very inspired by the same ruins that were fueling his ideas for some of his music.
Artistically, it was looking
to achieve several things. One was to represent Tom's music, but not just to simply represent it, but to create a, I guess, symbiotic relationship between the visuals and the music. It was essential to do this to keep the cohesiveness of the project. Also wanted to create really stimulating visuals that did not distract from the music. So at the same time as needing to be visually exciting, it was necessary that the visuals did not overwhelm the musical composition. And I think in the beginning, when we first started working, there was concern that some of the effects or some of the colors might overwhelm the music. So we went back and forth, trying different techniques, trying different applications. And at times Tom would say, okay, maybe at this point, maybe we just have blue, or maybe at this point we just change instead of have an animation, perhaps we keep the image still and we just change the colors. So the combination of all of that, I think, brought the project together and made it a lot more cohesive.